we went to a wedding, which is brilliant. Day one, everybody else has finished. They've gone in, and I'm just like, did you hear all the music? Did you go to the wedding? And they're like, no, we're in a race. And I was just like, oh, I went to a wedding. So I went to a wedding. I went to temples with parrots. There was a military barracks, and we went and saw that. And any important buildings, lots and lots of different things. So I had a very different experience. We would walk through villages, and just everybody would stop and talk to us. And because he was so interested in his, and telling me, and then obviously telling them what we were doing. And then we got to this school, and they came out, and they absolutely covered me in like this dried, crushed rose petals. So I did smell like Turkish delight. My top, I will never wash my top. I've got it preserved and framed because it's covered in the red rose petals, which is my blessing from the school. So it was lovely, really lovely.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Running Tales podcast with me, Craig Lewis, and the owner of the voice you just heard, Emily Moore. Emily is talking there about her experience of completing the Capital to Country Ultra Marathon at the end of last year. Capital to Country is a 5-day, 123-mile event that winds its way through the foothills of Nepal. Despite being an experienced runner and triathlete, Emily took the unusual step of powerwalking the whole event, a move which resulted in her times remaining only slightly slower than those of other seasoned ultra runners taking part, while also enabling her to take on a more authentic view of her spectacular surroundings. It's part of a plan she hopes will allow her to tackle the formidable Marathon des Sables in April this year, the latest endeavour in a running career which almost never got underway. That's because Emily was told she'd never walk unaided again, let alone run, following an accident when she was just 19. Determined to prove everyone wrong, Emily entered the London Marathon, and 4 years later was cheered home by, among others, her knee surgeon. I spoke to Emily about running while pregnant, why running has helped her meet friends all around the world, and how the Nepal Capital to Country Ultra saw her find herself again after divorce. But before we move on to Emily's story, I want to say a word about this week's podcast sponsor. Regular listeners to the Running Tales podcast will remember our chat with two-time World Marathon Running Champion Grayson Murphy in July last year. If not, please make sure to go and check it out as it's a really good episode. Grayson is a phenomenal runner who has set incredible standards on both the trail and on the track. And now she's joined forces with this podcast to offer our lovely listeners, that's you, the chance to plan their runs the Grayson Murphy way. The Racing Grayson training log and planner is your key to staying organised and inspired, whatever your running goal might be. With a sleek hardcover, vibrant new colours and the unique aeroplane arms snap-in bookmark, if you don't know what that means, again, have a listen back to the podcast. The planner will allow you to dive into your training schedule and goal-setting worksheet, inspiring you to plan and achieve all of your running objectives. With dedicated daily spaces to track both training and life events, inspirational quotes and mental health journey prompts, all bundled up on sustainable Forest Stewardship Council paper, the Racing Grayson training log is your companion to chasing your wildest dreams. Priced at just $29.99, this planner is already an absolute bargain waiting to be snapped up. But thanks to Running Tales and Grayson Murphy, you can get 20% off any purchase. Simply head over to www.racing-grayson.com. That's Racing Grayson, RACIN-GRAYSON.com. Visit the product page there and use the discount code RUNNINGTALES20 to take advantage of this amazing offer. You can find a direct link and all these details in our show notes. So now you're ready to take on the running world yourself, let's head back to this week's podcast and the story of Emily Moore, who I asked whether she's always been a runner.
I used to do 1,500 metres at school. So long distance has always been something that I loved, but I used to want to run barefoot. I was a bit obsessed with Zola Budd, I think, when I was a kid, and a weird thing to be obsessed with. But so I always used to want to run barefoot, but I actually didn't then. I ran at school, but then I didn't run. And then when I was 19, I had an accident and I was told I would never run again. I injured my knee, and so basically at 21 I was then told I would walk with elbow crutches, and I would nearly always need support, and I was determined that I wouldn't be that. And so actually my knee surgeon was So he was an orthopedic surgeon from Oxford. He actually was at mile 25 of my first marathon, because I was determined I wasn't going to be, and it wouldn't be that way. So I just started off running 5Ks and then 10Ks. And when I was growing up, my first PE teacher, if you like, at school, she did the London Marathon, and I think it might have been either Flora or Mars, I can't remember, but she came in with the silver blanket. And I must have been 5 or 6, I think, at school. So it was my very first school, and she came in with this silver foil blanket, and I'd always wanted one. So I was determined I was going to do London Marathon.
Yeah, and as you were coming back from that knee injury and being told you probably wouldn't be able to run again, might not even be able to sort of walk properly again. I mean, how hard was that process, and how tough was it getting out there again for the first time?
Really hard, really, really hard. And I tried all sorts of different things to help. I tried trainers that were built up, because technology's moved on so much since then anyway. But yeah, it was, I remember running in a pair of, I think they were Asics. They might have been 2010s or something like that. And they were quite a built up supportive shoe. And I could never get past 5Ks with them. And it hurt so much all the time. And I remember my dad telling me that you don't, and I'd got like arches, my arches were quite low because of the injuries and things like that. And my dad saying you don't support an arch by putting a pillar underneath it. So I then started running with zero, and it was kind of, I suppose, back to the whole Zola Bud thing. And I then started running with minimalistic trainers. And it's when Nike Freeze came out. Do you remember Nike Freeze, the very first time they came out? And it was a pair of those that I got, and I transitioned so slowly into them. I remember that I'd got them, and I walked around the house in them for a week before I even dared go outside running in them. And so I slowly built up. And that then, once I'd got those, I then was able to increase my mileage. But it was a really slow process. And I just, each week I'd add like 5% on my long run. But it took a long time. A long, long time. But we know how long it takes to get into London Marathon anyway.
So that was perfect for you.
Yeah. So the whole, it was still when you could was it the 3 years and then you were in? So on the 4th year you were in, that's when I got my first London Marathon, which was 2011. I got my first place. So, I'd been applying every year to get a place, and then got a place that way.
My wife actually did it for a charity place last year, but that was after 10 years of failing to get in. It's so tough to get in there now. But I'm just intrigued slightly with your kind of journey of recovery still, and the reaction of other people around you and other runners. And was it all very encouraging, or were there any voices sort of saying, "Oh, look, this is a lovely goal, but you're going to do yourself some long-term damage here"?
No, I think everybody was really positive. Actually, interestingly enough, the only time I've ever had any negative stuff was when I was pregnant and still running. I still trained through both my pregnancies and ran quite long distances through both of them. So yeah, I think that's the only time I've ever had any negativity around my running, I think, is when I was pregnant.
Why do you think that is? Is there just a feeling that whatever people...
There's a lack of knowledge. There's a lack of knowledge around it. And I mean, I was, by that point, when I was pregnant with my daughter, I was training for an Ironman. So I suspect there was there's a lack of knowledge around pregnancy and running and exercise. But I had a great midwife who was absolutely brilliant and was just like, if you're doing it already, then you keep on doing it, and people say, oh, listen, make sure you listen to your body. You don't have any choice when you're pregnant. But your body screams at you with what you can do and what you can't do. So, I did 4 marathons while I was pregnant with Iona, my daughter. And I remember running Manchester Marathon with a running for two t-shirt on it.
Yeah. Somebody told me, I can't remember who it was, told me the other day that they found it easier to run while pregnant than they did after having given birth.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I was much more able to run during pregnancy. The after pregnancy, when Iona was born, and then obviously with Mouse as well, that getting back to running, that's really difficult because all your ligaments are really loose and things like that. So yeah, it's harder to run, I think, post pregnancy. And I think we have a tendency to rush back into training to get that whole get your body back. That's the hardest bit. Physically for me, that running after I'd had my children was harder than actually running during pregnancy. I loved running during pregnancy. I just had a great time doing it.
Yeah, and had children coming into the world with more marathons under their belt than most adults.
Yes, yeah, and I mean my two especially. They've done. Iona will tell anybody that's listening that she took part in an Ironman when Mummy was pregnant with me. She told Alistair Brownlee that. But yeah, no, and I think it's running during pregnancy is really good.
Just rewinding to that first marathon, how did it go on the day? Was the knee held up? Presumably, the surgeon was there to greet you, and running started.
The knee held up. I had a brilliant time. I remember going through Blackwall Tunnel, and it was a really hot. It was a hot one, and you train, don't you, all the way. That's the weird thing about London Marathon. You train for it all during the really cold weather, through the snow and the ice, and then suddenly marathon day is absolute scorcher, apart from this year when it rained, and I ran in the rain this year. But yeah, it's always so hot at London Marathon Day. But yeah, I remember Blackwall Tunnel being like Armageddon. And you went down there, and it's the only place where no one can see you and everybody walks. And there's, it just was it's a very strange, but I loved every minute of it. I really did love every single step and every minute of London Marathon. And then I entered Berlin and Pisa straight after. So I did 3 marathons. Edinburgh. Yeah, I did Edinburgh, Berlin and Pisa. So I did 4 marathons in the first year of doing marathon.
And just to let people know where running has taken you since then, because it didn't end with those 4. You've done quite a few marathons and longer distances and triathlons, I believe.
Yeah. So the running then led to I have a group of friends who I worked at the time within the wedding industry, and I have a group of friends that are photographers, and they were all cyclists and runners. So there was all a bit of competitiveness around the fact that I'd got the fastest marathon time, but they were much better on bikes than me. So then I started cycling, which then led to learning to swim, because I couldn't, because as soon as you're swimming and cycling and running, everybody then says, when are you going to do a triathlon? And I was like, I can't swim. So in 2014, I learned to swim as an adult. So I then did my first Ironman in that August. And that's then shortly after when Iona was born. So I did Ironmans, long distance swim, long distance bike rides. I've always stuck to doing the marathon as being the longest distance I would ever run, and I didn't think I would ever go over that. And then I don't know, something just switched in me that I just wanted to do something slightly longer. And a girlfriend sent me a link, Zoe. She sent me a link saying, I've seen this race, it's Glasgow to Edinburgh, what do you think? And I thought that she meant that she'd entered, but I put and literally within half an hour of her sending it, I'd put, I've entered 2, let's sort out the logistics. And she was just like, I meant consider it, not not enter it. And I just done it. And so we both did that together, and that's then obviously started a bit of a bug really for going longer distances.
Yeah, and that's kind of prompted a different way of moving forward for you as well, hasn't it? Rather than just running.
Yes. So Zoe and I did Glasgow to Edinburgh together, and we set off, I suppose, at our normal marathon pace, which may not have been the wisest of moves that we've both ever done. But we were both, very cocky off the back of Ironman. We both done Ironmans that year, so it's just like, it's just a breeze. We got to about 30 miles, and it was somewhere near the Falkirk Wheel, and Zoe's legs fell off. And we then, our pace dramatically slowed, and we're like, we've got a long way to go. And then walkers started overtaking us. Power walkers started overtaking us, which is really quite demoralising. But what we realised is that their average pace, if you looked at it, their pace average across the race was the same as ours. And we'd been running, and we'd exhausted ourselves running, and then had literally nothing left in the tank, and we was just dragging ourselves. So then we'd started to decide that actually maybe we should, and we did London Marathon in April this year as well, and that was our last ever. We said that was our last attempt at actually running, because from then on we were going to start looking at doing like the ultra distances, and then look at how we could walk. And we did the Thames Path Ultra this year, and it was so hot, and we just walked the whole thing. And what we noticed is that there were for the first 20 miles, everybody was overtaking us. Of course they were. We were walking, but actually, once you got to the 20-mile stage, we then just carried on, and we just kept the same pace. And our average pace across the race was the same. We didn't drop, and we both finished really strong and in a great place. And that obviously then led me to entering Simon's race, and I did. And looking at that, and so I found that race, and I was just like, well, that's 5 days of mainly ultras. Simon says they're not ultras, but most of them were. What is it about ultra running that they don't actually measure the distance correctly?
Well, I think it just gets to a point where it's so far that no one really minds. They just know it's going to be painful, whatever it is.
I know, but when you've got a measurement in your head, you're just like, Simon, you said this was going to be 30 miles. It's 33.
Yeah. I bet those last 3 were fun.
Your 17 isn't 17. But yeah, so I suppose I just started power walking, and then through the summer, ready for the Nepal trip, I did a lot of wild camping / walking, and I was just coming down the Northumberland coast, and I would walk all day, get my bivvy bag out, usually have fish and chips, get my bivvy bag out and sleep on the beach, and then get up the next morning and carry on. And that's how I trained for the Nepal trip, which was 5 incredible days. I can't tell you how much I loved it. Absolutely loved every minute of it, even the long day, which there seemed to be a lot of elevation on.
And probably ought to just explain to people listening to this. We've spoken about it before, but the 5-day trip out in Nepal is the capital to country ultra. It covers 123 miles. Simon Hollis, who's the guy who runs it all. And I know you had quite an amazing trip out there. And I think one of the most interesting things that I found when we spoke before was that, as you've alluded to, despite power walking it all, you were only finishing an hour or 2 behind some of the people who were running it, and these are experienced ultra runners.
Yeah, so the first day I finished, so Helen was the winner on the first day, and I was only an hour after her.
Yeah. And
obviously she's an incredible runner, absolutely phenomenal runner, very competitive as well. She doesn't like to let you know that though. So her and Tarn, very competitive running, but yeah, and I think the biggest difference was an hour and a half overall. But yeah, so I suppose, and I mean, they're very experienced ultra runners, and I'm not. But actually, to only finish an hour and a half behind everybody, I mean, the first day I was really shocked that I was only an hour after Helen. The first day, I thought, if I'm within 3 hours of them, then that's fine, because I knew that they were phenomenal runners, and that I was actually, and I didn't run, and I made a apart from right at the very beginning for the photos, and then right at the end on the very last day. But so I wanted to make sure, because I wanted to know that I could do this, and also I suppose it's quite good for Simon as well, that actually this is then an event that everybody can do and take part in.
I think you ended up having quite a different experience from everybody else through doing it that way, and seeing perhaps a little bit more of Nepal.
Yeah, I went to a wedding.
Yeah.
So I've got a guy at the back, Kancha, his name is, and so he was the back marker, if you like. And it was really funny, because no one told me on the first day that there was going to be this back marker. So, I'm a woman in a different country. I know that I've got a tracker on me, but I know that also I'm not anywhere near any of the other runners. I didn't know how close they were, actually. I thought that instantly they would be gone and out of distance. So, and I'm just following these white arrows made out of flour. And there's this guy just behind me, and you want water? And I thought, I don't even know who you are. I'm not taking water off you. Who are you? It could be anything. It looks like a fresh bottle, but who knows? You could have just filled it up from some dirty tap. And he got really close at one point. I actually thought I could hit him with my walking pole. It'd be all right. If he gets too close, that's my plan. I'm just going to hit him with my walking pole. And then I saw Simon and Simon's wife, and they were obviously keep an eye on us. And I was just like, "Do you know who this Muppet is?" Like that, he's following. And they were like, "Yeah, he's the back marker." And I was just like, "Oh, I nearly hit him twice with my walking poles." And then Cantor and I, obviously, they introduced me to him. And then we became friends. I suppose we're still in touch now. We became friends over the duration. He wouldn't be there all day with me, poor chap. I mean, that would be really quite tedious. So, but he would join me sort of like 5 miles in, and then he'd be with me for most of the day. And then he would, when like the leaders had finished, Binay, who was like the head llama guy, he would then come out and pick him up, and then they would sort of like be on motorbikes, just doubling around me. But yeah, so Cantor was brilliant because he was so proud of his country, and we went to a wedding, which is brilliant. Day one, everybody else has finished, they've gone in, and I'm just like, "Did you hear all the music? Did you go to the wedding?" And they're like, "No, we're in a race." And I was just like, "Oh, I went to a wedding." So I went to a wedding, I went to temples with parrots. There was a military barracks, and we went and saw that. And any important buildings Cantor would show, and lots and lots of different things. So I had a very different experience. We would walk through villages, and just everybody would stop and talk to us. And because he was so interested in his, and telling me, and then obviously telling them what we were doing. So it was definitely, and obviously on the last day. So if you spoke to Owen.
Yes.
Have you?
Yeah.
So on the last day, Owen and I were together. Well, we were together from day 3, I think, onwards. Cantor's brother is the headmaster of a charity school that Cantor went to, and we were going past it. And he was really funny that day because he'd been really close with us all the way through, and just standing behind chatting with us. And one day we'd got Dharmesh with us as well, so we kind of had made like our own little group. I classed myself as the Pied Piper at the back, just gathering people. And we'd been blessed by one lot of locals, which was great. And they'd given us tangerine, which is the best tangerine I've ever had in my entire life. And then we got to this school, and they came out, and they absolutely covered me in like this dried, crushed rose petals. So I did smell like Turkish delight, which is lovely. But yeah, my top, I will never wash my top. I've got it preserved and framed because it's covered in the red rose petals, which is my blessing from the school. So it was lovely, really lovely.
That's really interesting in terms of how running is so powerful in terms of its potential to meet other people, even if you're just doing a local 5K or a park run, or to be able to embrace different cultures in different countries. It kind of is something that has that power.
Yeah, absolutely. I've got friends all over the world that I've made through runs. I've been running, and I'm quite chatty, don't know if you know. And so you meet people, and I'll be running along, and I'll just look at someone and just say something silly, and I am very chatty, and so you just start talking to people, and I've made some incredible friends through running, incredible friends through it. Even 10Ks. I did a 10K round Urchester Country Park one year. It was one of their dirt. I think they called it the dirt. There was 3 of them, and I met a girl who now lives in Australia. But we're great friends, and we met on that run. And she wasn't local, but she'd seen it advertised, so she'd come up and done it. And we've been friends. I've got friends from marathons, and they're still great friends.
Yeah, and I think Nepal's quite a spiritual trip for you as well, wasn't it?
It really was. Yes. Yeah. I was in the Himalayas. I turned 18 in the Himalayas, and I was on a youth expedition. Still got friends from there as well. That's 28 years ago. And after that trip, not long after it, I met and married my now ex-husband, and we were married for a long time, and then I got divorced just at the start of the pandemic. My marriage ended. And I suppose it's like grief almost, in a way, your marriage ending. And so I then decided that I wanted to do something, and I wanted to go back to the Himalayas and to almost find who I was again, because, I'm a working mum of 2. And so you kind of get lost a little bit. I think, I'm, in the playground, I'm my owner's mum, or I'm Mouse's mum. And you almost lose your identity as to who you are, or you're someone's wife, or I'm a teacher. So I'm their teacher. And I suppose I'd lost Emily. And so I wanted to go back to Nepal to find Emily again and just reconnect with me as a person, and not just be known as someone's mum or someone's wife or my college lecturer. So yeah, I cried the first day. I made these little videos as I was walking, mainly to send to my kids because of the time difference that they would be asleep or in school when I finished for the day, and then by the time they'd come home, I was asleep. So I made these little videos, and the first day I just cried. I cried on my video because I was just like, I feel so connected again with the place and who I am. It was great having Helen on the trip as well, who's also a mum who runs, and so it's interesting, isn't it? Sometimes exercise, like I cycle a lot as well. And quite often when I first joined my cycling club, everybody would go to me, also, how come you're out? Who's got your kids? And I'd be like, well, who's got yours?
Yeah.
And you're cycling and you're a mum. Yeah, you're a dad and you're still cycling. So I suppose there's a little bit of that. And I just wanted to be Emily, if that it probably sounds silly. It probably sounds silly, doesn't it? But I wanted to reconnect with who I was before I got married, and the woman before I got married and had kids. And I definitely found her.
I think it absolutely makes sense. And there's a little bit of that for everyone, I think, in running, particularly with longer distance running, as you get out there and you sort of get into that zone and your mind goes off somewhere else, or it tries to find you, and it gets away from those rigors of everyday life, and you can sort of try and peel back a few layers and find yourself.
Yeah, it's cheaper than counselling, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
Although there's a lot of trainers in my cupboard now.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, this is actually one of the big lies, isn't it, about running, that it's a cheap sport, along with all you need is a pair of trainers, because you also need something to hold your phone, and you need your latest Garmin, and you need a head torch. It never ends.
And now, for me, oh my God. So I don't know so obviously when we were chatting last time, I'd said that obviously during the training of I was aware that I'd wanted to do MDS, because obviously, and so that was my plan of walking, because I know that in the heat of the Sahara I won't be able to run at all, and so the whole walking thing came about because I wanted to make sure that I would be able to do that. I entered, so I am going. It's not long away. I've suddenly realised it's in April. I knew it was in April anyway, but like I'm not going next April. I'm going this April. And so suddenly now, like it's just like I rang the organizer today, and I was just like, I think I've just emptied my bank account of just buying freeze-dried food. And oh God, so now is trainers, freeze-dried food. Now it's a really, I had a really, to be fair, I was really lucky in the Nepal trip that I'd got a really good rucksack anyway, so that running one, that would be my advice to anybody doing it. Make sure you've got a decent running rucksack, not like Owen, whose strap broke in the first 5 miles. But yeah, so today's been like one of those really expensive days where I was just like, God, running is not a cheap sport.
How exciting Well, I guess how exciting and how frightening is it to know that you're doing MDS that soon?
Oh, it's ridiculous. Like everybody, I haven't really fessed up to a lot of people yet. So when you put this out, people will now know. So yeah, I have told my really closest friends. They know. I fessed up on a Zoom call after Christmas that I was going to do it. And I don't, for 2 of them, I know it was definitely not a shock. They'd worked out. Hadn't seemed to have got back on my bike. They're like, you're still running. And there's only, if you've done a 5-day multi-stage run, there's only one thing that you're planning on doing. But I think they assumed that I was going 2025. I think it's a bit of a shock for everybody that I'm going 2024. I tell my students and they're like, oh, why? Why? Why would you do that? And I'm just like, I don't know, but there's something about it. And I've ordered myself one of those hats with a flap down the back, and I'm just like, why have I done this?
It's such an iconic race, isn't it? It's such a well-known race and a celebrated race, and yeah, I think to have the chance to feel that you're able to do that and challenge yourself in that way, it must be pretty amazing and hugely exciting.
It's mental though, isn't it? Let's be honest.
Yeah.
I've entered MDS. It's here. It is. We're on what, second week of January, and I'm going in April, and I've entered the toughest. What is supposed to be the toughest foot race on the
Yeah.
earth.
Yeah.
That'd be all right. That's my. Someone said to me about it today, and I was like, well, it'll be all right, won't it? You know, what could go wrong? They were like, you're in the desert. It's not like, and we were talking about food prep and things like that, and I was just like, because in Nepal, I worked out that I couldn't consume. They have these 800-calorie breakfasts. I can only do 400 calories of those before I'm like, I can't eat anymore. This is like wallpaper paste. And they're like, what are you? And so on the Nepal trip, I was having bananas during the day. Well, I can't have bananas in the Sahara Desert. And so I'm just trying to work out what I'm going to do now. Just like, my God, I've got to find a substitute, a banana substitute.
Well, if there's anybody out there who knows of a good banana substitute, then let us know in the comments, and we'll let Emily know because she needs to have that for MDS. But I'm
Got to
just
have another 450 calories a day, which I
yeah.
reckon it's three bananas, isn't it? Three bananas is 450 calories. So I need to find something. I've got cashew nuts, salted cashew nuts, pepperami, pork pies, which is my go-to on cycling. That's not good, and that's not good calories per gram and carbs per gram. And I don't think a pork pie would survive the desert.
Pork
Might get
pies in
some.
the desert, yeah.
It's not good, is it?
Probably not. I'm just thinking, really, actually, looking back on our conversation today, really, what would Emily, who'd just been told she'd never might not ever be able to run again, think of Emily about to do the MDS?
She'd think she was Grace Jones. She would think she was a rock. She would like, she's fierce. People talk about Beyonce, and I've always said to my girlfriends, whenever you say to like a friend and she's wearing something really nice, and you'll go, you look great, and they'll go, oh, this old thing, and I'm like, Beyonce wouldn't say that. She'd say, look, rubbish on the hanger, but it looks incredible on me. Well, I'm not Beyonce, I'm Grace Jones. I'm an inner Grace Jones. And I think Emily, who was told she couldn't walk or wouldn't be able to walk properly again unaided, I think she would be like, that's Grace Jones, that is. That's pure Grace Jones. You know, it's gonna be an experience. And I can't almost the running is the sideshow. Does that make sense? The meeting people, the experience, the
Yeah.
being in the desert, the camaraderie, the laugh, and I do have a really loud laugh. That was one of the things one of the guys in Nepal said to me. He said, you have the loudest laugh I've ever heard. It's been said before. I think it's the big teeth. They make a loud laugh. Big teeth, big smile, big mouth, big laugh. So I think it's that's what I'm looking forward to most, is the meeting people and the experience of it, and sharing a tent probably with people that snore, you know, and just making friends for life. Because I
Yeah.
think when you do anything like that, that shared experience, that's what you take away from it. You forget the pain of the running and the pain of the sand, and well, I'm hoping so anyway. It might be ingrained in life, but I think actually when you talk to people about these things, that's what they talk about. They talk about the people that they met and those exchanges. That's what they take from it, not the actual physical running side of things. It's the joy that they from meeting other people and being part of something. So that's what I'm looking forward to. So the old Emily, she'd be very proud, a little bit
Fantastic.
shocked.
Shocked and proud. Well, I think that's exactly how she should have felt or should be feeling. And well done you, and good luck with MDS. And Emily, thank you so much for joining me today on the Running Tales podcast.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks again for joining us on the Running Tales podcast. I hope you enjoyed Emily Moore's story as much as I did. It's amazing to hear how she went from being told she wouldn't walk unaided again to being on the very edge of running the marathon des Sables. Remember, if you do enjoy the Running Tales podcast, to give us a positive rating or review wherever you listen. You can also catch up with loads of stories from the running world on our Substack newsletter, which can be found at www.runningtales.substack.com. Another quick reminder of our incredible offer this week from Grayson Murphy. Make sure to head over to www.rayson-grayson.com and use the discount code RunningTales20 to get a fantastic deal on your Racing Grayson training log and planner. Thanks again for joining us on this week's Running Tales podcast, and I look forward to seeing you all again next week for another Running Tale.